So I want to go ahead and get started for everyone. Um, let's go ahead and jump right in. So we are going to be talking about Copilot Chat, and it is now available for you in GCC. So we are going to talk about some of the different things to keep in mind and how to use this secure, private, and very powerful AI chat. So forgot to turn my camera on here, but hello everyone. My name is Larissa Cunningham, and I am a learning strategist with Planet Technologies on our Evolve 365 team. So love helping learn new tools and new capabilities. So as we go through our presentation today, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We have a great team that's also going to help answer those questions. And as I'm able to, I'll also try to address them during our presentation. So today our intention is to talk about Microsoft Copilot as a high-level overview, and then we're going to talk about how to access Copilot, some different tips with creating prompts, and just using Copilot Chat in general, and some of the use cases you might find it valuable for. So all of that being said, I want to just kind of talk about AI in general is very, very popular. Oh, I'm going to pause because I see someone saying they can't see anything. Can I get a thumbs up if others can see my screen, or I can stop and reshare?
Yeah, I can see
All
and
right.
hear you well.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So sorry about that. I wonder if,
I'm good now. Okay.
okay, perfect. All right. So just to kind of step back just a little bit and talk about AI in general, it's so popular. There are so many different tools you're likely seeing being promoted in different spaces. And the main reason that we that we're talking about Copilot specifically is because it's going to help us achieve some of those different capabilities, like summarizing lengthy documents, creating different professional and customer ready content. You can generate quite a bit or get a lot of feedback from Copilot, but it's really important to just keep in mind that with all of those different services that are out there, the way that these uh, large language models work in most spaces is that they actually learn off of your conversations and your data, where and with Copilot we don't have to worry about that. So something to just be aware of is that using any non-approved AI web services can really risk uh, exposing some of that personal data, that proprietary data that might be more confidential. So we want to be really careful when we're working with our organizational information. So with Copilot Chat, it is a very different workflow. I know many of us are probably very used to Google searches where we put in really short and sweet. We try to use as few words as possible to try and get the best results. But Copilot Chat is going to take you far beyond that search experience. It does a great job at searching and helping research as well, but you can go into more depth. You can ask specific questions, make requests, start to create things, and actually engage Copilot as if you're talking to it like a colleague. And that is what is going to result in the best experience. So you'll be able to not just look things up, but also get details into the specifics of what you're working with. So again, why Copilot? The first is that Copilot is going to be utilizing the most powerful AI models that are out there. So it has those built in without, some of the additional risks. So without going too far into the technicals of what's going on behind the scenes, just know that it's using those powerful AI models. And built into a lot of the experience that you'll have with Copilot is that source transparency. One of the biggest things with working with AI is making sure that the content you create or get help with is accurate. And that source transparency is a huge key to that. So we want to make sure we can cite our sources and understand what information we're pulling. So that is built into the way Copilot functions. There's also no knowledge cutoff. So Copilot is going to provide those up-to-date answers rather than being stopped by the end of last year or something like that. So you can pull real-time information when you're researching and discussing with Copilot. And the last key element is that commercial data protection. This is what is going to allow you to have that peace of mind and know that Copilot's not saving or sharing or training on any of your prompts, responses, or documents that you're sharing. So you're not training Copilot or anything like that. So if you are looking to find Copilot, which I would love for you to do, I'd love for you to follow along as we do some of our demonstrations here in a moment. There's a couple different places you can find it. The first is if you just go to m365copilot.com, you should be able to log in with your credentials and start using Copilot there. You may or may not have the Copilot app installed on your desktop. That might also be an option for you. If you're using the Edge browser, often you will see a Copilot symbol in the top right-hand corner, which I'll try to point out here in a moment, or there's a mobile app as well. So just depending on the best way, I believe you can also, if you're in Teams, you can actually add it as an application and access it that way. So whatever works best for you, but would love for you to access if you can and follow along. So we'll notice that when we're working in Copilot, we'll get a special symbol that we wouldn't get if we were using a personal account, which is what tells you you have that data protection. So this is what you'll get with a work account. There's no human eyes on it except for yours. So after signing in, all of that data is going to be encrypted. No one else is going to have access to it. And it's personally exclusive. So again, I know I've said this, but it's a very important piece here. None of our responses are actually training the model. So when you go here to sign in, if this is the method you're choosing, you'd navigate to m365copilot.com. You can use this on your preferred browser. I do find that I prefer Edge, but that's a personal preference there. So just ensure that you're signed in with your work account, and you should see this little green shield in the top area that's going to tell you you have that enterprise data protection. So we'll take a closer look at this here in just a moment and actually explore the navigation and what you'd have access to. But getting started should be really easy. If you haven't had a chance to try this already, it's as easy as putting in a prompt, checking the sources for what the response comes back with, and continuing that conversation. So there's a lot of areas we can utilize this, and we'll talk through some of those scenarios. But for now, let's go ahead and jump over to my demo environment. And I just want to showcase a couple things here first. So I did go ahead and go to that website that we just mentioned. And looking here at Copilot, I can tell I'm here. I have some different suggestions here in the middle. These are just idea and inspiration for you to kind of get started with Copilot. The best thing you can do to get used to working with Copilot is just practice prompting with it. So this is a great place to start. Feel free to click on any of these and see how it responds, but here it's giving some general suggestions to ask Copilot about how to improve my workspace. We could identify risks, talk about, going out on holiday, things like that. So just for fun, let's go ahead and see what it writes me for this time frame. I have to fill in the dates. So let's say I'm going out July 1st through July 5th. And let's send that off to Copilot. So just like that, I'm having a conversation, and we're going to see that I have been having a couple technical difficulties this morning. So I might have to switch my environment here, but we'll go ahead and do that really quick. I do see someone asking to put the URL in, so we will go ahead and do that. Jennifer, if you could put that in the chat, that would be amazing.
Yep, will do.
All right. So let's go ahead and try that again and see if we can July 1st through, whoops. It is very forgiving if you misspell things, but I do like to be as accurate as I can if I notice those. But here very quickly, I'm getting a quick out of office email response. It's giving me a couple different options here depending on where I'm going since I didn't give it that information yet. And these are just some fun ways you could incorporate that. So very quickly, we've gotten some inspiration, some fun ideas and ways to work with Copilot. So one thing to know with your conversation here is that if I continue this back and forth, everything is going to be contextual. So Copilot in this conversation is going to understand from my initial prompt and its responses to me are going to build off each other, and I can refine some of these suggestions, have it make tweaks and adjustments so we can continue to go back and forth until we get exactly what we're looking for. You'll notice that above my text box, I actually have some suggestions here as well. These will adjust based off of your conversation, and it's going to kind of make some insights and recommendations about what you could do to continue that. So I could just ask it to give me more funny options. If I don't want to type anything, we could go back and forth. So it's going to make sure it doesn't repeat the ones that it gave me up here and adds on to what we were looking at. So anytime that you're working with Copilot and you get the response you needed and you want to move on to a new topic, what you would want to do is come up here to the top and hit New Chat. That's going to clear your canvas and make sure that it's not unintentionally referencing or trying to combine the topics that you switch to. So this just gives us that blank slate. We can start over and have a new conversation about a brand new topic. So that's this new chat button. This is our green shield that we're looking for. If you hover over it, it tells you you have enterprise data protection. And there's a couple different options. If you click the three-dot menu, we'll explore the recent pages. But the other area is that you do have your history that should kind of keep there off to the side. So if you don't see that initially, up in the top right corner, you'll see a rectangle with a little arrow. That is going to pull up your previous conversations. And if you don't see the one you're looking for, go ahead and hit see more. But this allows you to jump back into a conversation you might have been having yesterday, or even several days ago. Maybe you want to add on with the context you've already built. You can do that and jump back into it. So we can come right back to those out of office responses and continue the conversation without having to reinvent the wheel that we already worked through. All right. So now that we have a response here, I want to point out a couple other things. The first is that down here, you are going to see an option to edit in pages. If you really like something that you've created or want to keep it for future reference, maybe you want to use all of these out of office responses sometime down the road. If I hit edit in pages, that's going to take the response that I got from Copilot and put it into an area that I can adjust and customize. I do see a comment that I am currently in an in-private browser. That's just because I'm in another account than my normal one. So if that looks a little different, don't worry about that element. It's actually also the reason I don't see my Copilot symbol up here as well. So my space might look a little different. But when you turn this into a Copilot page, you can start to edit it, work with it, share it with other people, get collaborative feedback, all of that kind of information here we can add to it. So this gives you a lot more ability to start to work with it. And I still have my chat over here so I can keep working with Copilot and adding more responses to this page. All right, so I'll go ahead and close that out. And then the next two things that I want to point out are just down here with your text box. You aren't limited to just telling Copilot your context. You do have the option to actually add files from your computer. So if you click this add file, it will open up your file explorer and you can select different documents to attach so that it has more context and information for what you're looking for. You should also see a microphone button down here. So if it's easier for you to speak your prompt to Copilot, you can do that as well. And maybe make edits if you need to afterwards, but this allows you to kind of speak to Copilot. Now, right above our text box, we should see a view prompts option. It looks like a little page with a sparkle on it. And if I click this, this is going to be even more inspiration and prompts that Microsoft has actually put together, where there might be some tweaks of context that you need to give it, but it will help you kind of get started and inspired. So it's going to default to my Microsoft prompts here, and I can actually narrow this down based off of the task I'm trying to do. Maybe I'm wanting to ask questions and do research. You can look through these and utilize them so that it helps in that prompt creation space. All right, I do just want to pause here and see, were there any questions that we wanted to address with the demonstration? I do see your question on clearing your chat history, and yes, I do believe you can. And now I'm wondering if they moved where that is. So I might have to come back to that question, but I do believe you can clear that chat history if you need to. I know in some of the other areas you can. So we'll go from there. All right. Please feel free to call out if we have any other questions that we're missing. But I'll go ahead and come back now, and we'll try a few prompts here in just a moment. But just to give you some inspiration on how this might impact you, you can use Copilot to do things like summarize documents. Maybe you were shared a really large PDF, Word, or PowerPoint document. And if you attach that document to the chat that we're just looking at, you can just ask Copilot to summarize it and give you some of those key points. You can ask Copilot to draft internal communications, whether that's an email to share a policy update or change, or maybe an organizational change, anything like that. You can draft some of those internal communications. You can create learning assessments if that's applicable in your role, brainstorming engagement, or just different ideas to move a project forward. I often go to Copilot in a creative mindset where I'm just looking to generate ideas, and then I can kind of take that and move forward. It's really great for putting something onto the page for you to work with. Sometimes that blank canvas is very overwhelming and sometimes inhibits some of that creative pattern. You can summarize in plain language. So maybe you have a really technical documentation and you need to get help putting that into language for a different audience. Pulling action items from transcripts. So if you've recorded a meeting and you have the transcript from it, you could actually pull information from that. Simplify complex language, compare options. There's a lot of different ideas. So this is just to kind of spur that inspiration to see how this might help you. Now, going through a couple of these, I just want to talk through some different scenarios that might build on themselves. A really common one that we hear about is needing to work through an RFP process. And in this instance, you could ask Copilot to help you draft that, work through summarizing those key needs, and get those benefits. And then maybe from that task, you move on to analyzing the procurement data. And then from there, you might need to standardize certain contract templates. And so you can take each of these pieces and, as needed, attach those documents to your chat conversation, get that feedback, get the verbiage you're looking for, and start to update some of your templates and documents for processes. Again, that could help with emails. So if you needed to send an email approval with your rough draft and then summarize that for a stakeholder meeting, you can start to kind of morph the way that you're prompting Copilot through this different scenario. So at the end, hopefully you have that ability to kind of get everything that you need there. Another one that we're actually going to look at today is,
Larissa,
yeah.
there's a bunch of people that I'm very happy they're following along and trying to do some prompts, and they're getting some very weird responses. So things like generate response, open close parentheses, generate response, and nothing else. What I think we're seeing is that as they're rolling out to the GCC environments, I think they're having a few hiccups. So if you're seeing something like that when you're prompting in Copilot, I would just come back in just a little bit of time and give it another try. I do think that some instances are having hit or miss issues this morning. I know even Larissa and I were having some issues in our GCC environment. So I am sure it's just a timing thing. And as they keep rolling out, we'll get all of these kinks. So if you get something that looks like that, just know, come back and try again later this afternoon and see what you get. But yes, if it looks that crazy, then it's not responding correctly. So just wanted to add that there for anyone who's trying.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I was hoping it was just my experience that was having that, but it sounds like there might be something bigger going on. So, apologies that that's happening. But hopefully we can still kind of showcase and you can come back and try some of these things potentially later. Um, all right, so another scenario, just again for inspiration, we'll kind of try to test this out today. Hopefully Copilot works for us, but let's say we had to draft a new policy, whether that is an internal or team policy or a broader organizational policy. You could start your brainstorming process with Copilot, and then once you make sure that all of the necessary elements are covered and you're not forgetting anything, you can then continue that conversation and have Copilot turn that into policy language and something you can actually insert into an existing document or create a new one. From there, you might need to summarize for leadership for that approval. And then maybe you're creating those FAQ documents to preemptively help anybody who is going to be impacted by this change. And then you can take all of those things and draft an email announcement that references these different documents and resources and actually create a talking point where you can do a briefing. So these are all very different tasks at hand and might take different approaches as we achieve these different things, but Copilot can step in for each of these areas to help elevate our workflow and hopefully save us a lot of time and increase the quality of what we're producing. The last example I'll give for inspiration is if you're responding to a public inquiry, you could essentially take that inquiry, paste it into Copilot Chat, ask for some summary clarification. Maybe you need some additional context. I've used Copilot quite a bit to help me understand what acronyms that others are using frequently are referencing, and you can share context and get that information. And then have it help you draft a really professional response that is going to help you save time, make sure that you're responding respectfully, clear, and aligned with what you're looking for. And in all of this, you can tailor it to different audiences. That's one of the tips that I would actually give when you are talking to Copilot, is to share what audience is going to receive the information you're working towards. That can change the perspective Copilot takes. So you can go through kind of all of these, add that support information, review for clarity and tone, and then create the template for future use if you want to. So again, just looking for different ways that this might impact you. So let's actually take a look at that IT policy one and see if we can kind of work through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new chat here. And just to see, in case you're looking for a simpler prompt or something like that, I'm going to give a couple in here that you can kind of test as we go along. I'll put you might have to customize some of these here for you, but you could ask Copilot for some surprising facts about your hometown or to tell you more about a Microsoft application that you haven't used yet. So I'll put a couple of examples in here. Feel free to try these out. Hopefully for some of you, you're getting some responses here, but if not, you can come back and try these after it refreshes. So I'm actually going to try a couple of these first, and then we'll go into that IT policy change. So I'm sharing what I'll be putting into Copilot from my end. Feel free to change this for your role. But the first one I'm going to do is we're going to list some surprising facts about my hometown, and I'm actually going to do Louisville, Texas. And we're starting to get some quick responses that I might not have known. It would be fun to kind of see if you are able to, if you are or are already aware of some of these fun facts that it brings up. But really quickly with this response, I want to point out that that source transparency we talked about is going to be here. So I'm seeing this little number 1 after the first response, and I can actually go to that web address from that link. The same thing here for numbers 2 and 3. I do have those references. They're also listed at the very bottom. So if there's a lot, sometimes with longer prompts or more detailed elements you're working with, there might be a lot it's referencing. So you can come down here and click on those as well and review them. All right, so I'm going to try the second one out. Go ahead and hit new chat here. And I'm just going to say Microsoft Planner and see if I was aware of what it wants to tell me. This is a fun fact about a Microsoft application that you've never used before but are interested in trying. So it's very conversational. It's excited for me. I love that. And my answer here is in bold, and it's giving me some more context for why I might want to do that. So I could ask more questions, kind of go back and forth. Maybe I do want to dive more into understanding Planner or things like that. Feel free to complete that conversation, use these contextual suggestions, and continue forward with it. All right, and this one's just for fun. I like seeing Copilot be creative. So I want it to create a description and a superhero title for my role as a learning strategist. All right. Oh, that's a fun name. Okay, cool. And the nice thing about this, I guess pro and con, depending on how you look at it, is you'll get different results when you generate the same prompt. So I actually have used this prompt in the past and got very different responses to this. So it's fun to see some of those differences, but also means that if you don't like what you get the first time, you can regenerate, retry, use the same prompt even, and just get a slightly different version of what you were looking for. So this is fun. It kind of takes some assumptions, looks through, gives me a title and full on description as to why it said that. So hopefully that's a fun opportunity to go ahead and try and see if it aligns with your role. All right, so let's go ahead and look at if we were updating a policy. So I'm going to assume the role of someone in IT that needs to draft a policy for bringing your own devices. So this is a little bit longer prompt, but I'm going to try to give Copilot what it needs. So I'm going to be working on creating a bring your own device policy for our organization. We want employees to use their personal devices for work, but we need to ensure data security, compliance, company standards, and clear user responsibilities. So can you help me draft a professional BYOD policy that includes sections on eligibility, security requirements, acceptable use, support limitations, and employee responsibilities? So hopefully with giving it all of that context and the specifics of what I'm looking to outline, it will give me some really good feedback. All right, so now I can come in here and take a look at this. It is going through, all right, this is what our purpose is. This is how you determine your eligibility. And it is going through those different points that I wanted to make sure were covered, like security requirements and so forth. So once I review this, because you are still the expert in your field and you do want to go through, make sure everything makes sense to you and aligns with what you're expecting. So if I look through this and I'm happy with it, maybe my next step is to actually create the policy language itself. So I might say, this is great. Thanks for the outline. You don't have to be that conversational. I just feel like Copilot might be a friend of mine. So from here, I'm going to say, now, can you help me draft the full policy language for each section? And I want it to be in a formal, professional tone, suitable for inclusion and so forth. So I'm adding in a lot of information here to make sure that I'm giving Copilot the best chance at giving me what I'm looking for. All right. So here we have a draft on our BYOD policy. So this is great. I could come in here, I could make edits if I wanted to, give more context. Maybe I want to tweak the scope or eligibility. You can then prompt Copilot from this point and say, okay, please change the security requirements to include X, Y, and Z, and it would update. So you would still get the rest of what you had before, but it would send you a new response with those updates you requested. So my next step then, if I have created all of this, maybe I've turned this into a document or added to a document, maybe I now need to summarize this for executive leadership to review and approve. So if I do that, I'll go ahead and send it off. And again, this is nice because if I start a new conversation, I need to reference this policy, make sure that all of this context is being pulled in. But since I already have this conversation going, I don't have to put as much into this prompt. All right, so from here, we have that summary. I might potentially need it to be a little bit shorter. This is a little bit long. So let's just go ahead and say, please make the summary shorter. And if I needed it in a different format, maybe I was sending this as an email rather than just talking points for a meeting, I could put that into my prompt as well, and it would give me more of an email format. But from here, this looks a little bit more like what I might want to put together, and we'll kind of go ahead and move on to the next piece. So from here, once we get our executive leadership approval, we probably want to create some kind of documentation to help people if they have questions. Yes, we've put the policy together, but maybe there are going to be more questions that they have along with it. So let's just ask Copilot to help us create that. All right. Now, again, I know I showed earlier that you can take some of these, turn these into a page or different options like that, but you do typically have the option to actually copy the whole prompt. What I will note when you hit this copy option is that it's going to pull everything from the response. So you might need to go in and remove the conversational aspect where it's inviting you to ask more questions or saying, yes, I'll do that for you. So just make sure if you're copying and pasting this over, you're taking a look. Sometimes those references are still within the formatting. So just taking a look and making sure that it looks, polished and how you expect it to. All right, so it started to create an FAQ. Of course, we don't have the questions already, so these would be more assumed questions that they think will come up, but it's a great start, and we can always add to it once we start getting different questions in. So it's going to clarify and put this more in a question answer format rather than the formal policy document. So again, I can take this, turn it into its own document, publish this on a SharePoint page if I needed to, anything like that. So I'm pretty happy with it. So I would now like to turn this into an email that we can send this announcement out so that we're notifying everybody of this change. So I'm going to ask it to please draft an email announcement outlining the new policy changes, and please reference this this document for further review. So this is where I just want to kind of showcase how this might help. So I'm going to just drag and drop, because you can do that as well if you have your files open, my previous document of our IT policies. So I'm going to put that in there. Maybe you're referencing the FAQ document or multiple things. Looks like it. I might have tested Copilot's limits here, but we'll see if it shows up for me. But from here, you can start to pull that email announcement together, kind of get that formatting. Maybe you need to go in and make a couple of tweaks, but this should speed up that process dramatically for you so that you have a really good jumping off point, and it's just fine tuning rather than creating everything from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh. We'll see if that fixes my issue, but we'll come back here to this conversation, and I made it very grumpy. So if you're experiencing any issues, know that you're not alone. Hopefully this is not normal, just so you know. I haven't actually experienced quite this view until today, so hopefully that will get fixed shortly. All right. So just because I can't continue to build on that context, we'll go ahead and kind of stop there in that process. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how that can help. And even though we did that in one sitting, ideally you can go back to these. So in each step, you could come back in here and adjust. Now, if you're doing that with a conversation, you might consider renaming it. So in your chat history, you should see a 3-dot menu. And you do have the option to rename. So if it's just easier, whoops, I can't spell today. To rename it, you can make it just easier to identify and go from there. Just as a note from earlier, you can delete individual conversations at the very least. So hopefully I can find out how to clear all of it, but at the very least, you can delete individual ones. All right. So I want to come back now and talk a little bit about prompting, because this is going to be the core of your interaction with Copilot, and talk about what makes an effective prompt versus less effective, and some different elements to consider incorporating. So a really effective prompt is going to be really specific and detailed, typically going to use full sentences with clear instructions. So that might be something more along the lines of recap the findings of this article that I've copied below into the top 3 concerns, provide the answer in 2 to 3 paragraphs, and use a business tone. This tells exactly how much we're looking for, including the length of the recap we're trying to find. Versus if you do something vague with only a few words and no real context, like summarize the news about a company, you might get a much broader answer that isn't honed in for really what you're looking for, and it's going to take more prompting to get the answers that you need. So the more that you can identify what you're looking for Copilot to achieve, the better your prompting is going to be when you put that all together. So some different prompt elements to consider including. The first that I would recommend is a persona. So one thing that might have improved my prompt earlier is if I had told Copilot to assume that it was an IT professional and kind of what role they were playing. So define the role or character that Copilot needs to assume as it's achieving the task you're giving it. The second is going to be the task itself. In my opinion, this is the most important piece, because this is where you're going to clearly state what the AI is expected to accomplish. So if you're looking to answer a question, it's very different than if you're generating text or an email or a document. That's going to yield very different results. So knowing what that task is and clearly stating it is going to be really important. The next is your format. So consider specifying what format you want it to come out in. So if you're looking for an email, make that very clear in the prompt, create an email. If you're looking to develop an essay, a list, or report, those will be very different. I think one format I use very frequently is tables. Make a lot of really quick sense to me. I can kind of pull that information in a little bit faster. So I often ask for Copilot to answer questions, but give it back to me in a table format so that I can compare different options or see different timelines and things like that. The next is going to be adding in the audience. So not only do we want to know the persona that we're tackling this task from, but who is going to be the person reading it or receiving it. So the target audience is going to tailor both the tone and complexity. If you're targeting some really technical users versus an executive team or the general public, if you think about the different things you might share with each of those, your tone and the types of verbiage you might use might change dramatically. And then last, if this isn't already implemented into one of the previous elements, you can be very clear and direct with what tone you're looking for. We took on a humorous tone when we wrote our out of office, but maybe you need a really professional or reassuring, a sensitive tone, depending on the situation that you're finding yourself in. So yes, you can have a lot of fun with this, but it can also help really refine how your message is coming across. So if you were to use each of these, your prompt could look something like this, where you're filling in the blanks. Think like a executive assistant and create a informational document, right? So we fill in these blanks with the persona, the task, format, audience, and lastly, tone and style. So even from here, when I've used this format, there are still sometimes additional details I really want to give it because I know that's going to help the response and the specifications it comes back with. So in this example, we might say, okay, as a communications officer in a public health department, that's our persona, draft a press release. And we want that to summarize the outcome of recent vaccination campaign, including key metrics, community engagement, and community engagement highlights. Use a clear and public-facing tone, right? So we could change each of those up almost like a Mad Libs if you wanted and get drastically different results. So a couple of keys just to keep in mind when working with AI is we want to keep a growth mindset. That's the biggest thing that I would recommend is keeping in mind that most people feel behind because AI is progressing so quickly. And there's a lot of times when I've felt myself or heard other people say, am I doing this right? Is there something I'm doing wrong? But the reality is that this is a learning curve. And the more we use Copilot, the better and more proficient we get with it. So practice is your friend here. And when you can, take that leeway to start utilizing Copilot for different types of activities. At the end of the day, we want to focus on just progress, not perfection. So maybe you save a little bit of time or there's a little bit of a learning curve right now, but as you develop that habit, you're going to save more and more time and elevate your results more and more. So if you have any thoughts like, oh, well, AI can't do this right now. At the end of the day, you are still meant to be the pilot. You are still the expert. We want to use Copilot to help us, but it isn't going to be able to fully anticipate what we're looking for. If you feel like you're behind or you've missed the boat, no, there is no boat. Everyone feels this way. And at the end of the day, the best AI tools are going to be the ones that we actually use. So again, we want to build those habits, not chase a perfect result every time. And kind of going back to some of those prompting elements we just looked at, prompt engineering really isn't magic. It definitely is a blend of art and science, and there's no perfect answer for how to prompt AI. When you incorporate those elements, you'll get better results, but it's going to give you a different result every time. So just keep that in mind and know that we can kind of save some of those prompts we use or that were really beneficial, but collecting them like magic spells isn't going to be our like end all be all solution. So now the last piece here is just some people do think it's either completely amazing and others think it's totally useless. And the reality is that it is somewhere in between. So today's AI is the least advanced that we'll ever use. There are constant updates and improvements that are coming through. So continue using it, explore new features as they come available, and just kind of start to get used to that. So I want to go ahead and pause here and offer us some time. Were there any questions that we wanted to share as a whole or go back and address? All right, I see a lot of conversations going back and forth, but I haven't been able to keep up with all of it. Hopefully we've been able to get to most of your questions here. So I am going to come back here and just show a couple other things here. So one thing that you should be able to do as well, even though it didn't generate that response, we're going to go back up to a previous element that I had here. So if this is a prompt that you intend to use more than once, you can actually copy your prompts and edit them, but you can also save your prompts so that you can use them again in the future. So you not only have your history here, but you can also save some of those pieces as well. So definitely encourage kind of playing around with it, seeing how it works. If you're getting these results like I was today, feel free to just kind of come back. I think there were some caching issues initially that I was having, but I think there was more going on as well. So wonderful. I'm going to take a look at the chat here really quick, but definitely want to open it up and give you all some time to ask questions or share any feedback. I do see a question for the worker web toggle, and that was because I couldn't use the initial area that I was showcasing. I was having some technical difficulties here. You shouldn't see that toggle at the top. That is from a licensed perspective with a Copilot license. So apologies if that created any confusion there. All right. Jennifer, were there any questions that you wanted to address that we had in the chat? I see a lot of conversations going back and forth.
I think we were able to get most all of the questions. Leah, I see your question, and I'm not sure I fully understand. So if you wanted to come off mute, we can chat about that, or if you wanted to put more information in there, that we can do that. And Larissa, Jeff's got a question about uploading a PDF. So maybe you could chat through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So PDF is one of the supported file types. So if you wanted to create an analysis, let me see if I have an example PDF that I could pull in and have it review. I'm just double checking really quick. I might be able to just turn a PowerPoint into a. So let me actually save this as the presentation we were just looking at as a. Nope, I have a better idea. I'm thinking on the spot. So sorry, 1 second. I'm going to have Copilot just analyze this one here. So this is a PDF document. You can kind of tell that here. So please, now, depending on how your PDF is loaded, either way, it should do a really good job of doing a analysis on either what you already have or help you kind of develop that schedule. But just to kind of showcase that it can analyze PDFs as well, I'm just going to go ahead and send this off. And as long as we don't run into any additional quirks here, it should give me that overview. So it did reference the document I gave it and pulled through some of those key elements. So PDF is not a limitation here. You would just simply need to add it to your conversation. All right. Glancing through. Trying to see if we have any other questions here. All right. All right. Anything else that we want to call out today, Jennifer?
I think we got all of the questions answered. We are going to share this recording and share the presentation with you guys so that you can reference it at a future reference. We hope this is great. There is also another session today at 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. So excited about that. We're excited to have everyone join us. Hopefully you guys found this helpful, and we will follow up again with additional information.
Awesome. Thank you. And
Larissa, there's one last question I see. Could you show them when you save your prompt, how do you get back to it after?
Absolutely. So whether you're here in the middle of a chat or in a new chat, you should see these view prompts. This is your prompt gallery. And if you save a prompt, you'll see Microsoft prompts up here and your prompts down here. I don't currently have any saved, but once I saved one, let's go back up here. If I save this, you have the option to rename it. Go ahead and hit save, and that would display in your prompt gallery so that next time you want to use it, you can click on it and everything that was there before will pre-populate. So just keep that in mind if you were referencing a document. You'll notice mine's stated here but not linked. So just kind of know that. And one last thing that I do just want to mention is that when you upload a file to these conversations, they are saved to your OneDrive. So you might notice a new file called Microsoft Copilot Chat files. That's where those are getting saved. So you can always manage that as well.
All right. Larissa, quick question. If we upload a file that has some I'll call them images, screenshots, and we want Copilot to reformat or do a better version, will Copilot also rearrange those screenshots in the document that we have file uploaded?
So it likely won't change the document that you have uploaded. It might make some recommendations or potentially try to help you kind of restructure some of that. But likely it might be kind of a combined effort of getting feedback from Copilot, but maybe making some of those changes yourself. Without seeing the exact scenario, that's my initial reaction. I will say it does a pretty good job of analyzing images. So understanding what those screenshots are talking about and things like that should be something it can help with. But in terms of rearranging or recreating any of that, it might be a combined effort there.
Thank you.
Good morning, Larissa. I had a quick question about security.
Sure.
I was just curious, what data protection and compliance controls are in place for Copilot and GCC?
Yep. So this is Jennifer. Actually, any data protection and compliance that's available in Microsoft 365 is going to be available in Copilot as well. And so that's one of the benefits of using Copilot as AI because it's part of the Microsoft 365 stack. So we probably, in this webinar, we won't go into all of those details, but when you're looking at your governance and your planning and how you're getting set up, that's one of the things that your compliance teams will manage and then set up the policies and monitor and maintain that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? Does Microsoft have any demonstrations or strategies on how to demonstrate that sensitive data is not exposed to the is not exposed? So like, can you have somebody else like try to access one of your chats, or can you have somebody outside of the organization access some organizational data?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I understand the question, but do not know the answer. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to get your name and I can have one of our team members follow up with the answer. I don't know that off the top of my head. I understand what you're asking and think it's a good idea. I just don't know. So if anyone, I do know we have some Microsoft people on the phone. If anyone knows that answer, feel free to speak up. If not, I will follow up with you. Matthew, I'll follow up with you and make sure we get you connected with the right person to have that conversation.
Awesome. I did see another question that I'd love to clarify since I'm still sharing my screen. The pages that we're talking about when we start to edit these are different than Power Pages. Power Pages is a different application, but when we're talking about pages here, you should see on your left navigation, if you're in this area, you might see pages listed here. This is going to pull up your previous pages or anything that you've created there. If you don't see it there when you're working directly in Copilot, that three-dot menu we looked at initially shows you your recent pages, and you can search through those as well. So if you start to edit and work in some of those features, you can easily go back to them or make edits there, but it is different than Power Pages. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone so much for your time. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us if we can help in any way. But otherwise, hopefully we will get to work with you again soon.